In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Rubén Graciani. He's the Dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at James Madison University. Mr. Graciani has extensive experience in the performing arts field as a choreographer, director, dancer, business owner, Julliard School scholar, and much more. In this conversation, we touch on Mr. Graciani's time at JMU, owning a dance business, movement as communication and storytelling, objective and subjective beauty, human performance increasingly coveted or desired, and an overwhelming presence of technology and artificial intelligence. And we touch on many more topics regarding performing arts and things of that nature. This conversation was incredibly fun and fascinating, and as many of these conversations have done, it leads me to jump outside my comfort zone once again. I learned much about an aspect of our world I had never understood before, and I barely scratched the surface. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. Thank you for tuning into the Common Human Podcast. Seek knowledge and wisdom always. Mr. Graciani, you know yourself better than anyone else, better than me, your coworkers, neighbors, and friends. Could you describe who you are as a human being while touching on your experience as the Dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at James Madison University, along with your expertise in the performing arts in general?
Sure. Wow, that's a big,
It's a loaded question.
Loaded question. I think I'll just start about who I think I am as a person. I think sometimes saying who I am is like that perspective is often the really internal, and that who I really am is received by other people in different ways. So I'm not sure.
Right.
I think sometimes, and like if I could say exactly who I am, how I see myself is someone who is deeply passionate about the arts and about creativity, and who's really driven to express themselves. Someone who has come from some pretty challenging circumstances, with a lot of love and support, but also who has never really given up. There's a certain tenacity to how I approach my life that has served me well and also caused me plenty of problems.
Right.
But mostly served me well. And I guess the piece that I'm always looking for and trying to understand is how things work. And in my day-to-day life, it's like, how do these relationships work? How does this process work? How does this system work? How does this person function? And sometimes in my art making and choreography, it's like, how does this music work and why do I need to choreograph to it? And so that curiosity has really driven me for so long. And I keep figuring out new things that I want to know how they work. And it kind of leads me to the next job opportunity or project. And hopefully I like to think that I'm a really fun person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see. We'll see at the end of this if other people think so.
No, definitely. I'm already getting a incredibly positive vibe. So I think you're doing great thus far. But I love when you speak upon just understanding or appreciating creativity in general, and then maintaining curiosity, and how that's led you to, find new opportunity and creating new opportunity, and then, obviously facing adversity and things of that nature. So just in regards to your experience within the visual and performing arts, how has that kind of impacted your life in general, and just regarding kind of your time at James Madison University as well?
Sure. I think if I go back in time a little bit, to become successful in the arts requires not just some semblance of talent, but a level of diligence and willingness to, like, you have to do things over and over and over again, especially in my field, which was dance. Like, you don't just like master something once and then never do it again until you need it. Like you're sort of, you're training like an athlete. You're doing this stuff over and over and over again, and you have to love that.
Right.
Because the actual performances are the smallest part of what you do. in some
Sure.
ways, and like the work
No,
leading
that
up
makes
to
sense.
performances is so much more. And so I think that wanting to know how things work, to breaking down like, why does my body do this the wrong way, or why does this not work in this piece of choreography? What am I doing wrong? It really served me in some ways and allowed me to have that mindset of just, I don't want to say continuous improvement because that's a very corporate kind of way of thinking about it.
Sure.
But it's more of like this investment in understanding and knowing, and that can translate to all parts of your life. And it certainly has translated into my work at JMU, which is, as I started out at JMU as the director of the School of Theater and Dance, and I became the
Mm.
dean through some very unusual circumstances in some ways. And to lead a group of people, especially a group of people who are all artists and designers and academics, you need to want to understand them.
Sure.
And because everyone's coming at things from so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
They're all experts in their fields, but artistic egos are a real thing.
Right.
So you have to want to get into that. I'll call it like the mess of that work, which is
Sure.
really caring about people who you don't maybe agree with or don't understand on some level, but you want to get to know them. And that curiosity and that desire to figure out how things work and make them better has really, I think, given me the aptitude to be an administrator. Because I never thought when I was a dancer, like, oh, I'm going to go teach at a university and then I'm going to run
Sure.
a department and then I'm going to be a dean. I didn't even know what a dean was when I was
Right.
university.
I'm still trying to figure it out myself.
If you want me to break down what that is for you, I can.
Yeah. Might need a definition afterwards.
But I think there's this capacity for curious people, and also if you really care about students or you care about the institution and your work with faculty and staff, then it really doesn't matter what you have to do to solve the problem. You're just going to be focused on like improving the curriculum, improving the way that students, get into the programs and matriculate out of them and graduate. Like to me, all of that's interesting, even though some of
Sure.
it's tedious.
No. Absolutely. Um, I love when you speak upon capacity for creativity and then the ability to, one, have it yourself, have the creativity, but also to, I don't want to say manage because that sounds almost like you're saying corporate as well,
Yeah.
but more so just observe and be able to understand other individuals within this such creative field, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then you speak upon the actual performance is such a minute part of the entire equation compared to the repetition and the practice. And I don't know why I thought of this scene. Are you familiar with John Wick?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think it's the third one, and it's like his relative or family member, and she's in this cinema by herself, and she's watching a ballet, a
Oh,
female
yep.
just doing like
Mm-hmm.
her performance. And anyways, it just, I mean, there's so many more examples of ballet and performance and things of that nature, but just the continued repetition of just perfecting a craft, and you've been exposed to that at ultimate levels. And would you say that repetition and refining your craft is, could you relate that to your work now as well in regards to, okay,
Yeah, and I'll start by saying like I think every human is creative,
right,
innately creative. We're always solving problems all day long, even if it's finding a parking spot when the deck is full. um,
yeah,
but I think we start
especially at
to,
JMU.
yeah, it's truly. But as you go through life, there's that sort of normative experience of like trying to fit in, and so that sense of doing things differently, rather than doing them the way we've always done them, is kind of ingrained into society. And being willing to take that risk to say, why do we do it this way? Or is there another way I can live my life? Do I have to, like, can I be an artist? Can I do other things? Can I be, can I explore my sexuality? Whatever those things are.
Sure.
I think that there's a freedom that comes from making those choices. And so I think that creativity, though, what it does in my job now, the repetition isn't going to dance class, but the repetition is like looking at, let's say, curriculum or a process of
Mm-hmm.
how we function, and like not just assuming that let's do it the way we did it last time, but is there a way we can improve it? Is there a way we can sort of be comfortable in that organic and open-minded, constructive critique of anything, and
Mm-hmm.
be open to like thinking about like, well, is there a value to trying it in a new way? Because
Sure.
my job is different every day, but there's also things that we have to do every year. Like every month, there's certain things we do every September. There's certain things we do every October.
Mm-hmm.
You, for me to continue to be interested in this job, I have to apply some sort of creative focus and problem solving and digging into how to make things better. Otherwise, I would go insane.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like there's standard processes within the whole, obviously, aspect of things. I feel like inevitably, or a lot of individuals would. Uh, I mean, maybe I'm thinking of, like you're saying, you need creativity to function, and so in my case, maybe it would be some standardized thing, but also creativity. And anyways, I'm digressing, but before coming to James Madison University, you were a choreographer for RG dance projects for 14 years. What
Yep.
did you learn from this experience?
That was a project based company. It was really me producing myself and me sort of getting grants and getting opportunities to make my voice kind of heard and seen in New York and other places. And I think I learned a couple things from it. One, there's certain types of art making that you only do if you kind of have to do it. It's so much work. It is so labor intensive and thankless and financially challenging and draining, that you should only be doing it. There's no glory. You do it because you are just driven by this need to communicate in that way. And
Mm-hmm.
I discovered that I do have that, and I do want to create all the time.
Right.
But the challenges of running your own company, I was basically the marketer, the fundraiser, the executive director. It was sort of me trying to manage everything, and I was
Wow.
also teaching at an institution at that time. um, and I realized that like the cost of that for me, I wasn't sure that I got the value that I needed. If there was some other way that I could ex- find opportunities to express myself, whether teaching in the academy and choreographing on students, and then also getting commissions from other dance companies, which is what I do now. Um, that I wanted some sort of balance and a little bit
Sure.
more structure. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I learned is that dance, the discipline of dance for me created all these translatable skills, like that diligence and resilience and problem solving was what allowed me to figure out how to do Photoshop and InDesign, and
Sure.
I'm creating my own stuff and learning how budgets work and learning how
Mm-hmm.
grant writing works. Like I've discovered that I was not only capable, but that my training had, even though it wasn't explicit, there was these transferable skills that allowed me to be like, I can figure this out, and I
Yeah.
know to keep doing it over and over again until I get it right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that kind of parallel. And I think it also gave me the confidence that I had a voice that, even if I didn't become some world famous choreographer, I had what I felt like was really positive responses to the things that I was saying, and that I could trust when I had an idea that I wanted to explore in a piece of choreography or a project, that it was probably worth it for me to investigate that and really dig in, because I had very positive responses to the work that I was making. So that was
Sure.
really uh, something that helped me keep going when all the other things were like feeling impossible.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. Just the payoff at the end of the day, knowing that your work is valuable. So, were you originally like? I guess I'm trying to understand from within that 14 years, did you kind of, I'm also kind of a corporate mindset, but did you work your way up through, I guess?
Um, Not in the way that you might, not in the way
Okay.
you might imagine. So,
Okay. I was a finance major, so I'm really
yeah, yeah, all
trying to
good.
understand the.
There's definitely like tiers to being produced as an artist,
Mhm.
and there's definitely like, you know, you usually don't get the grants the first time out, and you have to
Mhm.
convince someone to help you produce your projects, because producing
Right.
a dance project is super expensive. You're paying for
Mhm.
dancers, all of sets and costumes and lights and all these things, and the rental of the theater. So I think what the working my way up was like going through the process of feeling confident in my dance making ability and my my voice. And part of that was graduate school. Part of that was teaching different places and getting opportunities that were smaller, and then building those to sort of larger opportunities.
Right.
And then when I had a season in New York, which I was really excited by and proud of, and I got a bunch of grants, and that was sort of like the biggest project, one of the biggest projects my company did at the time. And that was really me having enough work that I'd produced in smaller levels that I could use as samples to get someone to convince them to fund me
That makes
at a,
sense. Okay.
so I was not exactly working my way up, but also sort of building my portfolio of you can say artifacts or work, artistic works that
Sure.
were examples for people to say, oh, okay, we trust that this person's going to not make a mess with this money in this project.
Sure. Sure. Gaining trust within the field in which you're working in, and then
Yeah,
obviously expanding your network too to collaborate with individuals
yeah.
and build, I guess, inevitably your brand. So you went to Juilliard too as well, correct?
I did go to Juilliard. Yeah.
Okay. Was that part of your graduate program?
No, so I went to
Okay.
I have sort of like a Billy Elliot. Have you ever seen that movie?
Um, I'm familiar with the name, but I
Like,
don't think I've seen it.
don't worry. So I have sort of a Billy Elliot story where like I had never really danced before, and I saw this dance performance, and I was like, I'm gonna do that. And before
Right.
that, I had been like in this really accelerated math and science program, and everyone thought I was going to go be a scientist or something.
Okay.
And, and so when I was in my freshman year of high school, I saw this dance performance and decided I was going to be a dancer, and somehow convinced my parents to take me to this audition at North Carolina School of the Arts, which was like a 7-hour drive from our house. And I auditioned for that school having basically had no dance training at all.
Wow.
And I was very lucky that physically I had the right proportions of a dancer. I was flexible enough. I had
Sure.
coordination. And somehow I convinced them to take me into that school. And it was like a boarding school that you went to year round.
Wow.
And at that school at the time, I'm not sure if it still is like this, you would only get accepted for 1 year at a time, and you had to
Okay.
be invited back at the end of every year. So basically they were like, you have a year to prove to us that
Yep.
you belong
Continuous.
here.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and and so in my sophomore year of high school, I basically just changed my whole life and started dancing. Um,
Sure.
so I went there for high school, and then I went to Juilliard. And Juilliard was not a great fit for me in lots
Okay.
of ways, but mostly because I was a little immature. And when I went to Juilliard, there were no dorms. You just had like an apartment in the city. There was almost no. I was 18. I grew up in the Outer Banks,
Wow.
North Carolina. I had no oversight, parental or otherwise. My parents
Sure.
lived out of the country, and so I was,
Yeah.
1989, little
I could
18.
only imagine. Yeah.
So it was not. I definitely got distracted by the experience of being
Sure.
a person who was exploring their sexuality in New York City. Like,
Right. Right.
also,
Right.
I could go anywhere. You didn't have to have an ID. Like I could literally
Mm-hmm.
go to any club or any
That's
bar.
insane.
Yeah, it was. Luckily, I didn't have very much money, so
Okay. Okay. There was a hole at the end of the
I didn't know
process.
what kind of mess I could get myself into.
Yeah. 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 Well.
but but no, so I transferred after 2 years at Juilliard to another conservatory that's nearby, but in the suburbs at SUNY Purchase. So
Okay.
Juilliard was a really intense place, though I will say. All the conservatories I went to were very intense. Juilliard, there was only they only accepted 20 students a year for my cohort, 10 boys, 10 girls, out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who auditioned.
It's unbelievable.
When I auditioned, you had to, if you made it to the end, you had to go into this room with doctors, and they measured you. They tested your body fat, your all sorts of crazy stuff that probably
That's
is illegal now.
right. Like a
But
little intrusive.
yeah, like I went into a room and got, like, they measured the circumference of my thighs. They measured like just every single thing about me. And so, like,
Interesting.
yeah, they were really looking for a very specific thing
Wow.
there. But the training
Okay.
was very intense everywhere I went. It's
Right.
very,
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say cohort, like I know to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Juilliard, is that for, like, I want to say all the arts, like, or is it just for dancing?
it's music, dance, and theater.
Music, dance, and theater. Okay. So in particular cohort
My
were
my dance cohort. So like
okay, dance
there
cohort.
would be
Gotcha.
a class, like my class entered in 1989, but some people entered in like the music major, the dance major, the theater major.
Okay, understood. Gotcha. Thank you for that clarification. So back to RG dance projects a little bit. How did you, I guess, seek out talent to kind of create your, I don't want to say like ideal performance, but based upon the story that you were trying to tell, the emotions that you were trying to portray,
Yeah.
the process and kind of your mental process, and then obviously executing that. How did that come across?
In some cases we had auditions where we would be in New York and I would audition for projects. In some cases I would just know dancers from my network and be like, I
Okay,
really want to work with this person on this project. Um, on some of my projects would do like projects with students who it would be an opportunity for them to have like a professional experience.
sure.
So there were certain students that I've worked with who were really talented, and just, I was like, someone gave me my first break. And so I was always of the mindset that like I can bring a student in and have them have this experience.
Yeah,
One, because they're talented artists, and two, because it would give them an opportunity.
right.
So I always try to do that.
That's incredible. So that was kind of, I mean, that's pretty awesome to have that in the back of your mind when you're, because you were in that, stance as well, or in their shoes as well. And so being able to give someone else an opportunity in the kind of younger individuals that are pursuing this career, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So your time at RG Dance Projects, obviously you were doing a lot of choreographing and directing and things of that nature. How did that experience, or how does that experience, obviously within the dancing and performing realm, how does it relate to your time at James Madison University now, and kind of using that expertise and kind of translating it towards a more administrative form in some way?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's this combination of my personality and sort of personal strengths and my work as an artist with administration, which is I do really want to know how things work. I took things apart all the time as a kid, often not getting them back together correctly, but you learn from that.
Right.
But when I was in graduate school, I started realizing that like I had the capacity to just do basic computer things. Like I figured out Excel. I learned InDesign,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would just start to do things because I wanted to do them, and I thought I could make things better by doing them. And I think
Sure.
you learn that from being in a rehearsal process. Like you're trying to figure out how to make something work, and you worked collaboratively with people to figure out how to make it work, and then you refine that process until it's good enough to be put on stage. And you also
Sure.
figure out that like when you're on stage, anything could happen. The conductor
Mm-hmm.
could be playing too fast, the lights could go out, a person who you're supposed to catch could fall down, this person who's supposed to catch you could fall down. So you have to learn to sort of zig when the world zags, and
Right.
be really responsive to your environment and to the people around you. And so I think that combination of like, frankly, business skills, like knowing Excel is a must.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
no,
and
absolutely.
you have to be good at it.
Sure,
And it makes you a much better administrator because you can process data much more quickly.
sure,
And so the combination of that and like the inherent things that you learn from being an artist or dancer have allowed me, I think, to think through problems, to work in a big team of people with varying egos and temperaments,
mm-hmm.
uh, and to be nimble in how we respond to issues. And when you work in a dance company, you kind of live with these people. You know, you're on the road with them for weeks and weeks at a time, which means you are in a hotel with them, you're in rehearsal with them, you perform with them, you eat dinner with them, like you are on the plane with them. So no matter what, you have to figure out how to keep the whole thing moving and to navigate these relationships and to make it work. Um, and to also be really intuitive when someone's off, how you can help support them, or when someone's unhappy and they're not ready to express that, how you can manage that situation. So you just get really good at that kind of interpersonal skill set. And I think that also really serves me because that's part of my job, is making sure people both get along, but also I'm supporting them and giving them what they need, and helping them get what they need, for their research or for their teaching. But also there's conflicts will definitely arise, and then
Sure.
mediating those conflicts and trying to understand the underlying need for each person and how to resolve them in a way that's productive. I think all of that comes from being on stage and being with a group of people.
Mm-hmm. Maintaining, or at least having those, or gaining, I should say, those interpersonal skills are incredibly necessary and crucial in
Yeah.
all aspects of life, and I think that's incredibly important. Do you feel as if your time at RG Projects, it was like an equivalent, like the interpersonal skills that you gain there in regards to helping someone when they're down or picking someone up when they need, or their performances in 2 hours and things of that nature? Do you feel as if that related almost equally to, I guess, talking with students on a day-to-day at JMU?
Yeah, I don't know if it's equal just my art time in RG dance projects, but
Mm-hmm.
I also dance for some other companies that we toured all over the world, and so those I think the combination of all those experiences help me, have a much broader sort of 30,000-foot view on things.
Right.
Sometimes as a student, or even when I was a faculty member, we can get kind of stuck in this narrow
Sure.
lane of what's happening to us right now. And when you're thinking about a big team of people, a big organization, and you can zoom out, and then figure out, like, sometimes people yell at me. Like, this is part
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
people are upset about things, right? And so,
Right.
and not taking any of that personally, and not
Right.
missing their concerns, but just thinking about objectively what they're having to say,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about empathetically why they might be upset, and then trying to come to a solution that you can't always give people what they want, but also validates their experience and looks for a way to make things better. For students in particular, the complexity of running a system like a college
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes really beyond the frame of their thinking, or
Sure.
the scope of their thinking. So they might think that there's an easy solution to something. If you just did X, this would be better. But doing X is like
Is going to
turning the
create.
Titanic on the,
Yeah.
it's much more complicated than just that one
Mm-hmm.
idea. But I will take that one idea and figure out if it's possible and reasonable to do what they're asking. But so I think how, as you scale up your responsibilities, like when I was a dancer, I was thinking about dancing. When I was a choreographer and a producer, I'm thinking about a much bigger picture. When I was a faculty member, I was thinking of the classroom. When I was a department chair, something even bigger. And as the
Mm-hmm.
dean, I just sort of am expanding the scope of what
Right.
I'm thinking about. And it does sort of trickle up and down, and all those experiences feed that.
No, that makes complete sense. And I think what you said, I mean, you said incredible things along the way, but one of the thing that caught out to me was just not taking anything personally. I think, the ability to do that throughout each day and then throughout life in general is obviously incredibly difficult, but
Mm-hmm.
will also pay off and pay dividends in the end
Yeah.
across life.
I'm
Go ahead.
better
Yeah.
at it sometimes than others, but I call it like my Teflon umbrella or my Teflon suit that like if someone's really upset about something and they come in really hot and
Yeah.
they're really, going after it in some ways, I just try to remind myself that there's a need here that's not being met. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, if I distill all of that down, they have a need that's not being met. And I can,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anyone to be rude to me and I'm not going to accept certain types of behavior, obviously, but like the
Right.
reality is like I can divorce the delivery of the message and think
Sure.
about what it is
Like the
I
wordage. Yeah.
yeah, like what can I do to meet this need? Is it possible? Um, and if someone's really being rude, I will certainly say like, hey, let's find a better way to communicate.
Let's take it down. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's not personal. It's it's usually somebody really advocating for themselves or advocating for somebody else, and I mostly admire that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I want people to be doing that. I want
Right.
students, faculty, and staff, and everyone to like say, "Hey, I have this idea," or "I think this is not right," or whatever it is. They should have
Yeah.
the agency and the space to do that.
No, 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 no. 100%. Yeah. Like there's a certain threshold, and that
Yeah,
threshold, if it goes, above, obviously, in regards to it being potentially negative or offensive, you can respond to that accordingly. Um, but at the same time, it's in terms of if someone's coming in too hot, it's almost a reflection of what they're currently going for. It's a reflection of their own reality. And so being able to, take what they say, like you said, objectively, break it down, and then have that conversation, removing some emotion and then understanding what that emotion is very important.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
you make a great point. Um, so the arts in general, painting, film, dance, photography, sculpting, etc., are so fascinating in all respects, to say the least. And their subjective and objective beauty, their uniqueness, or even their mundanity. When thinking about the art of dance in specific, what messages are typically portrayed? Happy, melancholy, mysteriousness, and how do certain movements dictate these messages?
Um, I think like everything, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Even culturally,
Right.
but for me, the thing I'm most interested in, I would say, is I'm less interested in telling narrative linear stories like a play or something like that. I'm more interested in how the human body can connect on a more sort of gut emotional level. I call it like emotionally charged movement. So
Mm-hmm.
there's things that when someone does around you, and even like the way their body changes, you get a feeling from it. You may not know exactly what they're thinking, but that's a threat. That's a not a threat.
Right.
That someone who's being flirted, whatever it is, you kind of get a sense of
No.
what.
Right.
Um, and to me, I think what's so powerful is like human beings have been communicating in movement since you know the dawn of time. People like danced around a fire, and that dance meant something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, cave for long times there was lots of religious and ceremonial things that happened through movement, and so I think humans have the capacity to interpret movement at a really high level. We don't always allow ourselves to, but if you're walking in an unknown area, you're very aware of the movements around you and what they might mean. And so
Right.
the thing when you go to, I think for a dance performance, I always tell people like, don't think about what you think it's supposed to mean, and just let yourself absorb it and feel it, and see if any emotion or any idea comes to your mind, because there's truly no wrong answer generally.
Mm-hmm.
Like art is for you to experience, and so um I could look at some piece of art and be like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful, and someone else could be like, that is so not
What
beautiful.
is that? Yeah.
Yeah, like why would anyone care about that?
Right.
And so I think that's both its like power and its limitation, is that like
Mm-hmm.
people want to know what it means on some level, but it doesn't have to mean anything specific. It means something to every individual who observes it or experiences it. And so for me, the power of movement is that it is a human communication tool that you can use to express yourself, to make mirror or comment on what's happening in the world around you, that isn't necessarily like writing a manifesto about X, Y, or Z. You're sharing that experience collectively. And I think there's a power for people to gather in a room and watch something live together, whether it's music or people standing in a room looking at art. Like there's something about that collective, like breathing the same air, having the exchange with the artist and the audience, that is, I don't know how to describe it, but having been
Yeah.
on both sides, it's really, it's unique and powerful and special. And I think that if more people would allow themselves to not be worried about the hows and the whys and judge, like, is it good or bad, or did I get it or not get it,
Right.
there'd be more energy and collective engagement with actually the power of the arts.
Sure. No, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. And I'm not sure if there's a particular stat for this, but so much communication is nonverbal, just in regards to everyday life. I mean,
Yeah.
some people don't have to say a word and you know exactly the emotions and anything they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so putting that on stage and putting that in front of a camera and things of that nature, that's why there were silent films, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Because there was a storyline and you could understand what was going on. But I love that you mentioned not having like predetermined thought processes on, is this good? Is this bad? Am I supposed to objectively understand this piece of art that I'm looking at, when it's just like, and it's so difficult too, like to just shut down that predetermined, just like you said, you mentioned agency and just like
Yeah.
script in your head and just being like, what do I feel from this? Like, what do I
Yeah.
genuinely feel? Um, so have you, I wouldn't say perfected that, but how have you kind of no, I know, I'm joking, just been able to maybe do that in your daily life?
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm just as human, I'm caught up in the rat race, and sometimes you just lean on the thing that's easy, right? Like I can turn on Netflix and watch something, whether it's good or bad. I'm like sort of like following a
Mm-hmm.
story. There's less mental work
Sure.
in some levels. So that's sort of maybe the difference of not, I don't think has to be some big difference between entertainment and art, but there's some things that require less of me to participate. Um, and I don't know that I've perfected the expression part. I think I've gotten more confident in not worrying about if somebody loves it or gets it.
Right.
But I think that I've gotten good at making people, not making them, but giving them opportunities to feel things
Okay.
through the work I do. And I really love to collaborate with other artists. And so that sense of multiple perspectives coming together and building something. And I love live singing with dance performance. I think there's something really powerful about the human voice, and you kind of feel it in your chest when a big group of people sings.
Right.
And so I think that there are tools that you can use make your message a little more powerful. And I think I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
better at directing those tools in the ways I want as I've
Right.
gotten more experience.
Right. um I'm curious what those tools might be, like in regards to, like, if you're trying to, portray a certain emotion. And um, I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, how the choreography and directing goes. Obviously, you can't explain that in, 20, 30 minutes and map it out for me, but, and us in the audience. But I am curious, kind of maybe a very generalized version
Sure,
of
I
it.
can give you a little example. So there's not
Okay.
one way to do this. There's like, some people paint really realistic paintings, some people paint really abstract paintings, some people use oils, some people use other things. So there's a ton of different ways to make choreography, but I am very interested in emotionally charged movement. And so one of the things I do is by using writing. So I'll give the dancers and myself a series of writing prompts to just do like sort of a free write, and express themselves, and usually it's about something that I'm thinking about that's related to, you know, the ideas that I find in the music or in the world. The most recent piece I made I thought it was about war in some ways, thinking about Ukraine and Israel and Gaza, and this visual artist did a lot of documentation of the Second World War. And then a friend and mentor passed away from an addiction problem, and I was like, oh, war can be like within yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
Like an emotional war. So we wrote, you know, people responded in writing, and then I would tell them to circle like the 10 most descriptive and emotionally charged words on their page, and then take those words and, you know, put them in any kind of order. So it didn't have to make any kind of sense, but
Mm-hmm.
and then make a movement phrase that was related to the words. And so I'm building this way of
Interesting.
excavating emotion without it being literal, and allowing the artist or dancer to have their own body express it in some ways. And then I take those little movement chunks and I manipulate them, and I add some of my material, and then I, you know, put stuff together, and then I start to organize it in the space and say, okay, you do it facing this, like, so it starts to build. It's like it's like architecture. I build this foundation, and then I start
Right.
building things on top of it. At the very end, you add like the stuff that makes it look pretty, you know, like the
Okay.
light costumes and the, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. That's so interesting. I've never thought of that process ever before. And that's
And
absolutely
lots of people do it in variations of it.
sure.
And so like it did not, I'm not some mad scientist who made this up. Like
Right. No, yeah, I mean,
experienced it in other ways, and it's a way for me to have the dancers have a voice, but also for me to have like this directorial, almost like making a film. Like I'm sort of moving the movement
sure.
in the way that I want it to go, or the way that I think I want it to go. There's a lot of editing obviously involved in that process too.
No, of course. So when you speak upon, like you said, particularly a situation, maybe internal war or external war that's going on, could you relate that to something happy or something like such, let's say love and seeing someone that you love or hugging your mom or your father, something, it's, I don't know. And then
Yeah,
circling those words, and then that foundation emotion kind of creates. Okay.
yeah. And so like you also have a choice when you think of, well, like, so I would say the dance is not necessarily about war. It just, I'm thinking about like all these things that happen with war, like the degradation of the
Sure.
human spirit, like how it affects communities and people who all of a sudden were, you know, colleagues or neighbors who are now pointing at each other in
Right.
anger. And you always have a choice about how you drive the through line of the work. And I chose, at the end of the dance, almost everybody falls down, sort of like they're not dead, but they're sort of like image of people. But there's one person who's still up and walking and looking, and that dancer is always, that ends like by looking out at the audience, like asking, like, who's left, like we're in this together. So I think there are ways to always balance what you're doing, but really any idea you can make. I mean, what's his name? I'm having a mental blank.
No
Blank.
worries.
Oh my god, this is embarrassing because I'm an arts person.
It's okay. I'm not, so I
Like,
could not give you any
um,
ideas.
um, the soup can painter. What? This is so terrible. Andy.
Something
Oh
with a
my.
P.
Oh my god. I just watched this documentary, and I've like lived in Pittsburgh. Um.
Warhol.
Yes. Oh my god. What is wrong with me? Like,
I'm actually proud of myself because I thought of it before I even typed anything, and the audio can attest to that. So I'm pretty excited.
I cannot believe that. Like, he made art about soup cans. I mean, it wasn't about soup cans, but like ostensibly, like anything can stir a human experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And artists having their own creative spin on things
Yeah.
is absolutely incredible. So, when thinking about art in general, how can humans advocate for the sustainment and flourishing of dance, painting, sculpting, etc., arts in general, in an ever increasing world of technology and instant gratification?
I mean, that's my job now. Part of my job, I think, is to get people to put their phones down and engage, and look at one another and take the time to be in a shared space and experience something together, like a performance or an art exhibit. Um, and it's hard because it's, even for myself, it's easy to go home and like click on Netflix and just like
Yeah,
brain turn to mush. And sometimes you just absolutely need that, like, for sure.
no,
But
definitely.
our challenge is to um, make it accessible, make people not feel like you have to be, of a certain part of society, go to the opera. Opera's for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of demystify it and make it accessible to folks, both financially and in sort of opportunities for them to engage.
Right.
Also, to try to figure out a way to remind people that the arts really are a mirror of who we are as a culture and a society. They're both telling the stories of now, but of the past and how someone might envision the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an opportunity, I think, for people to be in communion and in sort of connection with other people in a really disconnected world. And there's a very positive power to that. It's why people play sports on a team. It's why, like these little pockets of community are really important. And so I think we as artists and as certainly administrators have to engage our students in a way that they become lifelong. Not everyone's going to become an artist, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not every one of our students is going to graduate and become an artist, but if
Right.
they understand the value and the power of it, then they become an arts advocate. They become arts adjacent and arts patron. Like there's ways in which they're hopefully engaging in the arts in their whole life. And it's our job to broaden that net to not just people who have done it in school or had some exposure, but that we make people understand or feel the value of it for themselves in our own communities. And it's really hard to do in this world. Um,
No, absolutely.
but I think I have this hope that as AI starts really changing things so that you can't really believe what you see or hear on video or on audio. When you go to a dance performance, like the person's in front of you doing,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
can't make it. The
Yeah,
AI can
exactly.
replace that dancer. I mean, they could in
Right.
video or holographic matrix, but for right now, in a normal stage, like
Yeah, exactly.
AI is not going to take over the orchestra concert, the art gallery. So these are places where you're having an authentic experience with in connection with other people. So I'm hoping that becomes
100%.
a place and a thing that we can sort of keep reminding people of.
That's a crazy good point. I mean, like, no, like, seriously, like, when thinking about AI in general right now, I mean, you're going to buy, I don't know the prices on top of my head right now, but in regards to Apple, like the Apple headphones and the Meta headphones, virtual reality, things of that nature, people are paying thousands of dollars for this new technology and seeing AI and things of that nature. But thinking about a society in which almost seeing a human being performing right in front of you might become what as valuable as AI is right now. You know what I mean? Like it's almost a transition in which
Yeah,
just the human conversation or just the human performance of dancing, art, singing, etc., is going to be becoming, the what's it called? Just in high demand, obviously, because it's so limited.
yeah.
Um,
Right now, it's like those sort of we everyone's talking about, oh, the deep fakes. We don't know if that video, that did that person really say that, did the person really do that.
mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily so prevalent. We know the technology exists, and I've seen some examples from these things on AI where they can take one sentence from a person and then using AI have that person say anything else with their face, and it looks like a real video. And so one of the things I imagine is that, like, you're never going to know if you can trust what you see or hear on video or in media, but you absolutely can in live performance. With like deep fakes and stuff, it'll get to the point where you won't know if any media you consume is true or real. But if you go to the theater, you'll know it's real.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's becoming just so much more important. Like you're saying,
Yeah.
obviously facilitating that as a dean, which we still don't know the definition of, but um, a overseer of students being able to facilitate just the interaction and can you please put your phone down for 5 seconds or
Yeah.
whatever, just in regards to performing and just dancing and things of that nature. So I think that's crucial. With the little time we have, if you don't mind just answering this last question in regards, as a teacher, administrator, and dancer yourself, what is your advice to those pursuing or planning to pursue a career in the performing arts?
Please do. Yes. I think there's room for a lot of different ways of doing this. I think what I really love about this generation of student and what we're really trying to do right now in CVPA is I was trained in a very narrow lane, which is like at the end of this road, you do all this training and you have one option. You're going to be a dancer in a dance company, or you're going to be in an orchestra, or you're going to be X, Y, or Z. And, now someone can be a dancer on TikTok, or they can be, have a, there's people who have whole acting careers on Instagram.
Right.
Where they're sort of performing these characters. And so I think we want to build a world in which the students have the experience and agency and skill set to create any path that they want, and using their sort of the touchstone or their anchor point of whatever art form that is their art form or their design area. But my advice to them would be, you don't have to know your final destination. You just have to know what you want to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge anything after that. Just like, if you have something that you're driven to do next, a project, collaboration, to make something, just find a way to do it. And then you've gotten to that stage, and then, okay, what am I going to do next? Because I spent a lot of time thinking 5 steps ahead, which sometimes you definitely have to do. But as a young artist, I think I maybe missed a lot of opportunities because I was focused on these really linear pathways,
Mm-hmm.
and not maybe open to what opportunities might be around me in my periphery.
Sure.
So I would just say the world needs you. Take it one bite at a time. And truly, if you are a JMU student, especially, we want you to come back. We are here for you. We want to support you in any way that we can, and that doesn't end when you graduate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Keeping a wide perspective and open mind in regards to opportunities.
Yep.
Of course. But like you said, just getting to that next step is the most important thing. Obviously, the present moment, as cliche as it sounds, but then getting to the next stage, and then obviously that's going to create, as years and your lifetime comes along, you understand, you look back and be like, that one step created such a beautiful picture.
Yeah. And if you're so focused on a specific end goal, like you may not end up where you thought you were going to end up. I certainly never thought I was going to be a college dean, but if you are as open as possible to those peripheries and possibilities, I think most people, I hope, will look back and be like, wow, what a rich experience I've had, and look at where I've come. It wasn't where I thought I was going, maybe, but
right.
But I think it's there's a lot of power in that.
Absolutely. Well, so for the last minute we have, can you explain what a dean is?
Okay. I will do my best.
All right, cool.
So my role as the dean is if you think of it like an umbrella or a roof or superstructure, the college is this entity. And within the college, I have the School of Art, Design, and History, the School of Theater and Dance, the School of Music, and the Office of Creative Propulsion, and the Madison Art Collection. All of those things have their own leadership. There's a department head or director of each school and an executive director of the OCP. My role as the dean is to sort of provide vision for where I think the college could go. And for us, that's arts entrepreneurship, integrating arts in other areas, deep disciplinary dives, but also to make sure that the faculty and staff of all the areas have the things that they need, the resources they need to do the work they want to do, whether it's research or curriculum redesign, but also to be a push. So I'm leading and pushing at the same time. Like, it's easy to do things the way we've always done them. So I'm kind of pushing people to grow and be forward thinking, but I'm also leading, hopefully by example and with excitement. So I manage all of that. I manage sort of the processes and the budgets of all the areas as an overseer. And then finally, my least favorite part of the job is to make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if there's disciplinary problems that, or misconduct, sometimes that elevates to the office of the dean, and there's very strict processes like written in the faculty handbook or the student handbook about how that's handled. But really, I'm vision and operations and making sure the trains run on time, giving us a direction to go in. And I think part of my job, besides supporting folks, is looking for roadblocks or things that are going to be in the way in the future that I can try to figure out how we can get around or solve those problems, whether it's enrollment problems or whatever those roadblocks might be. My job is to try to anticipate them and figure out a solution.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for your incredible definition, and one I've been looking for of a dean in general, but also specifically for the College of Visual and Performing Arts, and really enjoyed this conversation, Mr. Graciani. Thank you so much.